Welcome to the String Theory of the Unexplained. I'm your host, John Venturi. Fred Saluga's our co-host. And today we're going to talk about conspiracies, the coronavirus conspiracies. But first, Fred, let me say this. Have you ever met your great-grandparents or saw a picture of what they look like?
Yeah.
Okay.
I met them.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, I never did. I have no idea what they look like. So one of the reasons I wanted to do the show is because now, we're on YouTube, right?
Right.
So unless they take this down in 20 years or so, I can tell my grandkids, oh, look me up, and it's there. Because like the Hangar One TV show, after 5 years, they don't show it anymore, you know. So we've done 80-something episodes. And in my mind, it's like I feel that there's a picture of me somewhere.
Right.
I don't know what they look like. I know my grandparents, but not my great-grandparents.
I've seen on my grandmother's side and grandfather's side.
Okay.
I didn't see my great-grandmother, she died, but my great-grandfather used to come to the house every Russian Christmas. He celebrated it with
Well,
us.
that's something. I mean, I don't remember my grandfather. I only remember both grandmothers. One grandfather, the other grandfather, Venturi, I don't even know, I don't ever remember meeting him. But here's a copy of a DVD of the last one on why there's no disclosure.
Okay.
But that's why I make, DVDs and we put this up. I want there to be a record that I existed somewhere 20 years from now. And maybe that's stupid, But,
Well, as far as you're going, they'll remember you for a long time.
good, I hope they do. The more controversial, the better. Well, here's some more controversy.
Yep.
We start this quarantine thing, and I'm sitting here, and it's so boring, and I say to myself, you know what, I think I'm going to write a book about this. And then I get this great idea, and I said to myself that I wrote this book, Apophis 2029, set in the year 2029. And this is really what got me going. I said, what if I take the characters from the book, write a new book set in 2020 with the same characters, but it's 9 years earlier.
Right.
So my brain starts racing at that point, and I say, you know what, I'm going to tie the two books together. They're novels, we'll just tie it together. Fred, it took me 5 days to write 110 pages to do the book. 5 days. And the first book I wrote, the Mayan calendar, 12/21/2012, took me 11 years to write 212 pages.
So you wrote how many books in between?
Well, in between was another 7 books plus some research papers. But it took me 11 years to get this one done. I got this book done in 5 days. And I've updated it a little bit over the past couple of days. But I put it up on Kindle, on Amazon, and it was up for exactly 1 week, 7 days, and I get a notice that they're taking it down. So I email the guy, and he sends me the policy that we have the right to determine what content we put up on Amazon. And he sends me the policy, and I read it. I replied back to him again. I said, "Are you telling me you're taking a novel down? This isn't like some revolutionary book, like Saul Alinsky's books are up, right? On how to destroy America. No. This is a novel. The title says Conspiracy. Right in the beginning, I said it's 90% based on fact, 10% storytelling, and I put, this is fiction.
Right.
They said, sorry, this book will not be on Amazon Kindle. So they took it down. Which is stunning. That's why I'm wearing the shirt, my American flag shirt. Where is free speech in America?
It's gone.
This is a novel. This is not, this isn't real. Most of it, what's in there is real.
I think that right now we're being run by a bunch of alleged, actually conspirators. They're the ones doing it. I mean, nothing that a conservative does can go today.
No, that's exactly what it is.
If you're not a liberal. If you're a liberal, you can say anything you want to say. They don't say a damn thing to you. If you're a conservative, you shut up.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing. That's why my first thought was, this is some 23-year-old kid working there at Amazon Kindle, and
Millennial.
he doesn't like. I got a new name for them, the millennials.
Yeah.
any child born in 2019 and 2020 will be coronials. For the coronavirus, they're coronials. So the book is full of all ideas like that. You know me.
Right.
I start thinking and my brain goes crazy. But I was going to do the show. I was at the church the other day and I wore this, right? I was going to do the show like this, Fred, but then I said, you can't see my face.
Yeah.
My great-grandkids will never know who, they'll think I was Hannibal Lecter.
That's true.
So I said, I'm not gonna wear my coal-filtered mask, but let's go through this. So I put this presentation together based on the book, and I start off with a history of viruses, quarantines, cool information that people want to know. So let's run through this. The history of quarantines, and this is what's in my book that they banned. It's banned in bookstores now, right? So quarantines first started with lepers. They had leper colonies and you were quarantined. Then you look at the Black Plague, 1348. Venice was really the first city that started the quarantine. When you showed up in a trade ship, they made you sit there for 40 days. 40 days before you could unload your cargo. I don't know how this stuff stayed fresh. They must have just salted everything. Then in my research, with the Black Plague, the Hail Mary prayer, right?
Yeah.
Because of the Black Plague, they added to the Hail Mary prayer, pray for us now at the hour of our death, because of the plague. That was not in the Hail Mary prayer until 1348. Then what people used to do in Europe, I think, was they would banish people to the forest when you were sick with something, and you would either have to heal or die. Those were early quarantines. In 1793 in Philadelphia, that was the capital of the United States, was Philadelphia. In 1793, they had to shut the city down and quarantine. Jefferson, Washington, Franklin, they all left the city. In 1900, 37% of people in America died of some sort of disease or virus or whatever. 37%. One out of 3 people, a little more than that, would die from a disease. Today it's 2%. So we've come a long way. You've probably heard of Typhoid Mary, right? You never heard of Typhoid Mary? In New York City. She had typhus in 1907. They kept her locked up 26 years. So apparently she didn't die of typhus, right? She had typhoid, but they kept her locked up for 26 years. Then I'm looking at other quarantines, right? Remember the extraterrestrial exposure law, 1969? It was an actual law, Title 14. It's all there, so you can see it on the screen. 1969. If you touched anything that came down from outer space that was extraterrestrial, you were not supposed to touch it. If you did go near it, try to take it, touch it, you would be subject to a $5,000 fine and quarantined by NASA without a hearing.
But I think that was for other things too.
Yeah.
I think that was for people who would be going up, the abductees and that they could actually take them and put them away for as long as they wanted.
Oh, that's a possibility.
That was the main purpose of it. They used that. Because if you look at it, so you had NASA, they sent people up to the moon. They brought rocks down. Why didn't they expose them?
Yeah.
This was for something totally, this is the same thing as the stuff is today. It's looking one way and it's for something else.
Well, it makes you wonder, because the astronauts came down and a lot of times they had a little trouble walking because they were, and remember they would carry them and they didn't know it get quarantined.
No, this was all for people who was being abducted, and you got abductees, contactees, and whatever. And they could take them and put them away as long as they wanted until they got the information.
All the news I've saw and read the past 2 weeks, nobody brought this up as being a quarantine.
Well, they don't want to.
Yeah, because they don't know about it.
Yeah, well,
they don't.
I think maybe they do, but they don't want to say nothing about that.
Okay. Let's talk about history of viruses. Again, this is the stuff that's in my banned book, right? Things that are very interesting and a lot more, right? So, history of viruses, 1793. That's the yellow fever where they shut down Philadelphia and the president and everybody else left because it was the capital. 50% of the people who got yellow fever died. 50%. In the 1800s, all the trade ships coming back and forth, They brought malaria, typhus, scarlet fever, measles, tuberculosis, smallpox, cholera, and diphtheria. And remember, 1 out of every 3 people died of this stuff, you know. More Americans died of the Spanish flu 100 years ago than in World War I. Now, when they are talking, we're going to get a cure for this, right? We're going to have a COVID-19 cure, and it's a challenge to the CDC. Keep in mind, there's no cure for AIDS, SARS, MERS, Zika, Ebola, swine flu, cancer, or diabetes.
Can I say something? That's a bunch of bullshit.
Well, there might be, but there's none in the public.
There is not, yeah, they're saying there isn't.
Yeah.
These are all designer diseases. AIDS was designed by us and it was created by us. SARS was created by us. This was all created on the Plum Island, the majority of this stuff.
And you know how it's interesting, if you remember AIDS, they said it was from Africa in the forest.
Yeah, green monkeys.
Yeah, almost.
Somebody had sex with a green monkey.
Yeah, well, like they turned over a rock or they cut a tree down. Next thing you know, there's AIDS. The monkey gets it and passes it on.
Yeah, the guy had sex with the green monkey.
Now, what did they say about COVID-19 in China? Came from bats, right? They tried every excuse to pull the wool over. Oh, it came from bats. No, it was an engineered virus. And we'll get to that. I don't want to talk about that now.
You're talking about the bats. They had a picture of a guy eating a bat on.
I saw that.
They've been eating bats since the beginning of time.
Those wet markets they have are unbelievable.
I mean, it's ungodly what them people do over there.
Well, then you got, 1952, 60,000 people. I didn't make a note here if they got polio or died of polio that year. Contracted polio, 60,000. And that was if not a death sentence, it would be a death sentence. You could become paralyzed. A lot of different things happen when you get polio.
But if you look at that now, there was some stuff the other day where they said actually they had a cancer drug in there. And that's why people of our generation, the boomers, the badasses of the world, that's why we're all dying from cancer, because it was actually
something in the polio vaccine.
Yeah, and it's coming out.
So so I look at this, Fred, and I say, people today, compared to people 100 years ago, they were mentally a lot stronger.
Right.
You had 5 kids, so 2 or 3 would survive. Right. Death was a way of life. Not anymore. Only 2% of people die from this type of stuff now, and I don't really think we're mentally prepared for a real pandemic, whether this turns out to be one or when it's said and done the numbers are just a little worse than the regular flu. It seems to be a little more aggressive and deadly, but it may not be when you get all the numbers. It may just be just a little stronger. So then I start thinking, my mind's racing, and I say, you got, what about movies and books and stuff? Well, what were some of the first ones that talked about viruses? Well, I Am Legend, Richard Matheson, 1954. It was really one of the first books to talk about this stuff, but it was a little bit different. They made a movie called Last Man on Earth in 64 with Vincent Price. Then there was The Omega Man in 71 with Charlton Heston, and then Will Smith in I Am Legend in 2007. But that one was a genetic virus that turned people into like vampire zombie demons, and the way you could fight it was you had to get a mixture of garlic and sunlight. If sunlight hit them, so it was kind of, they had that religious base and the vampire base to it, with the garlic. And it was actually, I Am Legend was really one of the inspirations for Night of the Living Dead here in Pittsburgh in 1968, and then you get The Walking Dead, World War Z, those are all, viruses. But that was really the one book that talked about the virus thing, mutating people and changing them, if not killing them, making them something else. So let's talk about panic and different prophecies, right? So you go 1938, Orson Welles, right? The Panic broadcast, Mercury Theater, New Jersey. That set the tone for not having any sort of disclosure, whether it's UFOs, whether it's an asteroid strike. If you can't solve it, you don't tell the people. Curiosity is not enough. And they based the Brookings Institute studies on what happened during the Panic broadcast, that people can't handle the truth, basically, So then, I was thinking about China where this originated, and you think about this, they had that one-child policy, remember that in 1980, right? But what happened from it was they ended up with 200 million more males than females because the daughters, they would actually throw them in the river because they needed a son to provide for the family.
Or eat 'em.
Well, the daughter would marry off, and then you'd have nobody when you get older. So that's 1980. 1980 was the Georgia Guidestones, remember that?
Well, who really wrote them?
They don't know.
I mean,
There was a confidentiality agreement that whoever created them cannot be disclosed. And it's all the information about that's in my book. I think there were 9. I can't remember now if they were 16 feet tall. There's 9 of them, but the basic main thing about that was to limit population to 500 million. That's the carrying weight of the planet, 500 million, which is a 93% reduction of what we got right now, from 7.2 billion to 500 million.
That's what what's his name was saying.
Gates.
Yeah. Gates said we got to go down by 95 million people.
Yeah. Well, then in 2009, you have the History Channel. Remember that show, Life After People?
I never watched it.
I watched it, and I was kind of stunned to how proud they were talking about when people are all gone, how the planet heals itself. And I said, what planet am I on? You're like praising, kill all the humans and the planet would be a lot better off. Well, I'm sure it would be, but I like being here. I really do. And then you get into all these other things with chemtrails, GMOs cause cancer, all of that. That all started to come out, maybe 10, 12, 15 years ago.
But nobody believes that stuff. They got the people believing that chemtrails is not there. That's from an airplane.
Well, everything, yeah.
I mean,
Well, I wouldn't say nobody believes it. They won't tell you the truth about anything. That's what the problem
is.
is.
A bunch of damn liars is what they are.
So, okay. So now, that's part of my book. Now I get into the conspiracy stuff, right? So I talk about the 2016 speech that Trump made, if you remember that one, about secret societies and a corrupt political system that needs to be replaced and all of that. So really the 1960s, you have, the hippie movement and those people with a socialist way of thinking. They went into the education system, media, entertainment system, all of that. That's those people that infiltrated a lot of that.
When you talk about the secret society, that's one of the reasons JFK got killed. Because he was talking about secret societies.
You know what's interesting though? If you watch Blue Book, they got Kennedy in there now. Do you watch Blue Book?
Yeah,
the last 2 episodes,
Kennedy,
you know it's going to lead up to his being killed because of the UFO stuff when he wanted to share information with Russia and make that stuff available.
Right.
So I think that's where the Blue Book show is going. But so I talk about the Trump speech in 16. QAnon was created in October of 17. Are you familiar with QAnon? Yeah. Okay, and I got 2 friends, one from Homeland Security, one from the military, that are telling me for the last 3 years this QAnon thing is real.
Yeah.
I said, I don't know.
I'm a member.
Yeah, well, I actually just bought the pin. The flag with the Q pin on that Trump's son wears. And Hannity wears it. It's got the Q on the flag.
My daughter, when we went down to see Trump down in Willing, she actually got me a sweatshirt with that on it. Okay.
Well, I'm running right now in June the election for delegate to the Republican National from Westmoreland County. If I win, I'm going to get to meet all these people, which would be cool. I'll give them a copy of my book because I'm going to print this book, even though they won't put it up online.
We want a copy too.
Yeah, I'll give you all a copy. But QAnon comes up from really the Pizzagate. Remember that? The Pizzagate investigations, where they claim this New York lawyer discovered this information. Then you got WikiLeaks, where some of the stuff is in there about Podesta and Hillary and all of that. QAnon comes out of that. Then you got MAGA, right? Make America Great Again. You didn't wear your red UFO hat, right? Make UFOs great again. But MAGA is supposed to, what QAnon says is, MAGA is really the military and the NSA. They met with Trump in 15, or 14, convinced him to run to save America, right? And that's what's really behind the whole Make America Great Again and some of his speeches and some of the information that they leak out. They call them Q crumbs. They leak information that actually turns out to be true.
Well, allegedly they've been arresting quite a bit of people in the last week or so.
The government?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the stuff they say is going to happen. There's going to be this great awakening. You know, one of their phrases is, where we go one, we go all. That was the slogan on the side of Kennedy's PT-109 boat.
Right.
That's where that slogan, it's really, to put all of this together in 17, this had to really be thought through. Almost like some of these CIA operations, you know, the Collins Elite, Project Mockingbird, this whole thing has been thought through. The other thing they say is, this whole movement is the opposite of Aleister Crowley's "do what thou wilt," which is really the, you know, the hippie liberal,
Right.
you know, whatever, if it makes you happy, do it. There are no rules. There's no consequences as long as you're happy. You're not hurting anybody. You know, but they view that has always Aleister Crowley. That has always been viewed as a demonic thing.
Right.
Of there's no God, there's no consequences, no rules. Where this here is the opposite of that, of being conservative, of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Ten Commandments, that type of stuff. I found it really interesting, you know, researching this. Then you remember, you know, then all the fake news comes out, the media mafia, it's all phony. And then somebody recently mentioned Operation Mockingbird,
Yeah, well, it was a big thing back
1953.
in the day. Yeah.
There were, I think, 400 newspapers, magazines that the CIA was working with to get our story into the news.
Right.
Their story, but the American story, let's say. Yeah. This is how we want to spin this, this is how we want to tell this, you know?
In the Vietnam War, they actually had military people telling TV what to put in there.
Oh yeah, that's all part of that, yeah.
That
So,
was Mockingbird.
this is really small. William Casey said, "We'll know our disinformation program is complete when everything the American public believes is false."
Well, you know what happened to Casey, don't you?
No.
He was afraid of water, he drowned.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Yeah, he
That's
drowned.
like the guys that committed suicide and shot themselves
Twice,
twice.
yeah.
Twice in the head.
Yeah, Casey drowned.
So then, you know, with this whole MAGA, QAnon thing, you got Soros, you got the Clintons, you know, all the stories, let's say. You got the Hollywood elites, you got the Silicon Valley tech companies like Amazon taking my novel down, you know, with this information. What have I said so far that's crazy? Nothing.
Well, but John, it's not crazy to you, and it's not crazy to me, but to other people, that's all
I guess
crazy.
so. But how is this any different than Catcher in the Rye, or you know, some other controversial book that's out there?
Well, but the only people with Catcher in the Rye is people with conspiracies that know what that is. But Clinton, okay, that's bringing up a new subject now. You see where Biden was accused of sexually abusing. So guess who's going to?
I think Cuomo is going to run.
No,
What do you think?
I don't think so.
Oh, you think Hillary's coming back?
I think Hillary's coming back in.
I think it's going to be Cuomo. If they knock Biden out of the box, I think it's going to be Cuomo because he's getting pressed now with New York. But this whole New York thing is going to turn so... Give it a week, Fred, and you're going to be crying as to how many people die in New York because of this disease.
But what he's doing, he's blaming Trump for everything, and he's the one that did all the shit.
Well, he had the ability, like Obama, a couple of years ago, they used up those masks for SARS, H1N1, not SARS, H1N1, swine flu, and they never replaced them.
Right.
So Obama in 15 and Cuomo in 16 didn't spend the money to replace the supply.
Right.
It's their fault. It's not Trump's fault. But, you know, when you spin it, that's what happens. So, you know, so all the stuff comes out about the New World Order, the deep state, and the media has no credibility. So that's, you know, leading up to some of the conspiracies we're going to talk about in a minute. So the way I look at this now, you know, I came out in 2015 when I heard Trump was running as a big Trump supporter. Two of my books that I wrote, I put in 15 and 16 his picture on the back page.
Oh, yeah.
When I published it, this is your next president. And I said it at our conferences, UFO conferences I ended with, here's your next president coming up.
Yeah.
And I caught a lot of flack over that. So you get, so what? So, you know, so what are we getting? 17, you get the Russian dossier, right? Now, I won't call it strike one. I call it ball one, because they missed, right?
Yeah.
It didn't stick. So ball two becomes the impeachment, right? And then on February 5th, Trump is acquitted. So remember February 5th, because the next slide on February 3rd, something interesting happens, right? So that's ball 2. So I already mentioned I have the Q pin, but ball 3 now is the COVID-19 virus, right? It gets released. Let me, maybe I'm crazy. I don't believe in coincidence. This was released from a bio lab in Wuhan, China. It either got out accidentally or on purpose. And I find it very interesting that the H1N1 SARS virus attacked mostly kids. This COVID-19 attacks mostly seniors. This is engineered viruses, and that's what I believe. Do you think this is an accident, that this just happened to happen when Trump is getting acquitted from impeachment?
Nothing in government just happened.
I agree with you.
Everything is
I agree with you. So I call this now ball 3, because this isn't going to stick. Trump's ratings are going higher and higher because he's actually rose to the occasion the way he's handling it.
If you look at the media is really putting him down, and which it depends on what station you watch, okay? I mean, you got that one guy, what's his name, on CNN, the African-American guy?
Yeah, I can't remember
Oh
his
my
name.
God, I heard him today. Then they had the guy the other day on there saying that they hoped that Hillary got, not Hillary, Melania got this swine flu and died. If they would have said that about Obama, they'd put him in jail.
It's a shame. It really is a shame. And the sheeple people fall for it. That's the most disappointing thing, is how people, they listen, they hear, and that's what they start repeating. So that's ball 1, ball 2, ball 3. This COVID thing is not going to stick on Trump, I'm telling you right now.
No,
it's not going to end.
No.
He's actually looking better because he's being more professional, no more joking and pointing fingers, not as much, But, so what's ball 4? When this is over in June, July, you still got till November. I'm telling you, in September, something else is going to come out, another attack against the president, and I think they're all orchestrated.
I do too.
That's what my book says, so I guess that's the part they didn't like. So let's talk about China now, since the president called it the Chinese flu.
That's what it was. It came from
Where'd it come from? China, just like the Spanish flu came from Spain.
But to be honest with you, John, we don't really know. It could be CIA that gave it to China to do.
Well, I'll tell you what happened.
One thing about that, China was having all them problems with them thousands and thousands of protesters. Then all of a sudden, all the protesters are gone.
Yeah.
I mean, like, poof, that was your flu right there.
Yeah. Well, you say that the protesters are gone. I just read China monitors cell phone usage. They monitor everything. They have their Ministry of IT, right? He just said 21 million people are no longer using their cell phones in China. Where did they go? Do you really think that China has less cases than Italy, less deaths than Italy? China is 20 times more populous than Italy. Do you really think they only had like 3,300 deaths? But yet 21 million people are no longer using their phones.
So it did.
Something doesn't make sense about anything that China tells you. So here's some history on China. 1989, you have the Tiananmen Square situation, right? The students protesting, they're arrested, they become political prisoners. They were used for organ transplants. As a matter of fact, in 2015, China said they would no longer use political prisoners for organ transplants. So if you were arrested in China, they would take your kidney, your liver, they cut you up, and they would use your body parts. They were able to prove in 2015 that China was lying, because based on the number of operations they were doing to do organ transplants, they had to be getting them from somewhere, so they were still taking it from prisoners. The kids that protested in Tiananmen Square became political prisoners, and then in 2005 you have the bodies exhibit across the world. Remember that exhibit? I went to see it here in Pittsburgh. Bodies. They had the human body without skin, where they showed you all the muscles, the tendons. Those were the Tiananmen Square protesters. China said, you want your freedom? You can have it. You can travel the world, but you're going to do it as an exhibit. And those were the bodies that were exhibited, were those protesters.
But didn't they kill
and that's a fact.
Didn't a tank run over somebody there or something?
No, I think the tank, that one kid stopped the tank, and that's that iconic picture where he stood in front of it and they stopped. But then they arrested them all
I thought
later.
they killed him.
So that's China. And then you see, like some of the far left people praising China. China helped stop this. You can't believe one thing that comes out of China, right? So here's my thought. China realizes, okay, the Russian dossier didn't work. The impeachment doesn't work, right? So Trump is putting tariffs on them. He's against globalization, which they're for, and they bought off the Clintons 20 years ago, and that's a fact with their donations. The Clintons pushed for globalization and moved stuff to China to make China a world power. They can't bully Trump. So what happens? A virus is now released, right? Now here's the timeline on this, right? China finds out about the first patient, whether this was an accident or they released it. 55-year-old male, November 17th, contracts the COVID-19 virus, right? He dies December 7th. President Xi from China slips on February 3rd. Remember, the impeachment acquittal was February 5th. And he knew it was going to go that way. On the 3rd, he slipped and he said, patient 0 was November 17th. Okay? So China knows now, November 17th, that this virus got out, right? Whether it got out accidentally, there's a story of 2 of the lab workers that quarantined themselves, all of that stuff, right? December 30th, well, this is Dr. Wen Liang, who sometime in December came out, remember, with the white mask, saying, I got it, this is a virus. Right? They arrest him on December 30th as spreading rumors and he's the whistleblower in Wuhan. They arrest him for spreading rumors, He dies a couple of weeks after that. He becomes a hero, really, in China. So, now, they knew since November 17th, right? January 23rd, Wuhan is quarantined. Okay, that's kind of like north central China. It would be like quarantining Detroit. Okay. All the visitors that come for the Chinese New Year 2 days later on the 25th are along the coast, the cities, right? All the foreigners there for the Chinese New Year they want to visit. China knows about this November 17th. They quarantined the city of Wuhan with 11 million people on January 23rd. January 25th is their New Year's, where they allow all the foreigners to visit and go home. They brought the virus all over the world, right. And China knew it, and that's exactly what was going to happen. On the 31st is our first American that dies, and I think right around there, or right before there, in January sometime, Trump had stopped all flights from China. Right. And he caught a lot of flack for that, right? Yeah. So on the 31st, the first American dies of this, and they also arrest Dr. Charles Lieber. He lied about where he was receiving millions of dollars in payments. He lied about it to the FBI or the Defense Department. They arrest him on the 31st for lying, okay? Turns out he was working in Wuhan, China, okay? So then what comes out is you have Australia some scientists working with the Wuhan lab. Right. What they had done in 2010 was take SARS, lace it with HIV strands, and made it even more lethal. Oh. They're working with the Wuhan lab. And it's amazing, I was told about that 3 weeks ago, about lacing the SARS with HIV, right? And I didn't see the story, I just saw the story 2 days ago. It came out in the news out of England, right? Then what we find out is the University of North Carolina has a bio lab. They're in Wilmington, where my daughter was living. Yeah. She was 2 miles from UNC, right? So they have a bio lab, okay. Turns out they got material from Fort Detrick that they were working on, right? Whether it was SARS, who knows what it was, They're working on it. Their people are going to Wuhan, working with the Chinese on how to work on viruses. Now, I'm going to assume they were tricked. Yeah. They were helping them, well, if you had a virus, this is what China does now is well, who knows? But what happens is China weaponizes all of this research from Australia, from the Harvard professor arrested on the 31st, the people from UNC going there to work on viruses with them. Their scientists are able to weaponize it. So they take the virus and now it's on steroids, which is why it's so much more aggressive, why it attacks more, why it's killing at a higher rate. This was an engineered virus out of China. I believe that 100%. And that's the timeline. So now what happens in March, 2 weeks ago, the Chinese say they accuse the American military of spreading COVID-19. There may have been some truth to it, in that the Harvard professor and the UNC professors went over there with strands that they snuck into the country and didn't declare. Or were working in that lab. We know they were working in the lab. But we didn't weaponize this thing. China did. So they're saying it's not them, it's the Americans, right? So, and then of course China has no new cases, right? The following couple of days they kick all the US reporters out of China. Because they don't want you to find out that there's still people dying in China. This has China's fingerprints all over this. China has an absolute history of bad behavior, so let's go through it, right? So you get China stealing, our components, electronics, counterfeiting all of our products. Remember, drywall was radioactive from China. Candy, toothpaste was toxic, made in China. Dog food, dogs were dying. The cheap dog food you buy. I used that dog food with my dog. All his fur fell out. I've now gone to the expensive stuff about 2 years ago, and all his fur grew back in. The stuff out of China was killing these animals, He probably could withstand it because he's a 110-pound dog. The little dogs were dying, right? You had tainted children's toys out of China. This stuff is all documented. I'm not making it up. Fentanyl out of China. Fish that they catch got carcinogenics in the fish, right? And now in 2019, you got this virus. Yet we want to work with China. So we can save a nickel on every item at Walmart. A quarter on every item. It's the most ridiculous thing you ever want to see. Because big money is being exchanged. Buying politicians.
That's the whole thing, John. That's what's happening. The politicians are all making money on it.
Yeah. Maybe this is why they banned my book, right? I say this in the book, So let's look at vaccines. I looked at the CDC. Vaccines are an $18 billion business, okay? CDC is like NASA. It's a private company, right? That gets funded by the government. CDC makes $4.6 billion on vaccines. They own the patents too. Ebola, H1N1, SARS, HIV, the regular flu shots, all the flu shots and all the vaccines that kids get, right? They've always lied about the safety of these things. There's a lot of people who won't take any of these shots.
I don't take any.
Well, there's such a mixture in there, and it's become such a potent cocktail. That's the increase in diabetes, asthma, autism. I think it's from these shots.
It is. I agree.
My daughter disagrees with me. My son agrees with me. But I think the vaccines are important if they were spread out and they were done in smaller doses. A kid only needs the whooping cough. Did you know that?
Yeah.
That's the only one that's going to kill him when he's first born is whooping cough. The others can be spread out and done later. But, I'm not a doctor. So now the COVID-19 kills 5% of people in their 60s. It kills less than 1%, probably 1/10% of young people, right? So 5% of people, not you, the cameraman and the producer, but I guess it would be you, right? So COVID-19 kills 5% of people in their 60s, 10% of people in their 70s, and 20% of people in their 80s. Isn't that interesting, In 2010, President Obama, with H1N1, which was the swine flu, he waits until 1,200 Americans die of it before he even reacts. And a lot of those were children because that one was attacking younger people, right? Vaccines normally take 18 months to approve. So we're going to go through phase 2 of this at the end of this year when the flu comes back and this comes back and there's no vaccine. There may never be a vaccine for this because we haven't really cured a whole lot of things besides polio and smallpox, to be honest with you, you know. 2 of the items I come across, one was eat plain yogurt because it builds up the bacteria in your stomach that kills these viruses. And now I'll tell you a quick story about antacids, right? I get terrible heartburn, right? So the doctor puts me on one of those antacid medications, right? For the 2 years I took it, one a day, for 2 straight years, both years I had walking pneumonia, okay? I tell the doctor, I'm not taking this stuff anymore, right? So, and plus, I injured something, he gives me Vioxx. Vioxx! I'm having chest pains. I stopped the Vioxx. I said to him, maybe it doesn't react with this antacid I'm on, but I'm having chest pains. He laughs. About 6 months later, people were dying of heart attacks from Vioxx, right? So I stopped the antacid. So what do I read most recently? If you're on these antacids and you get a flu virus, these bugs, you've now neutralized your stomach acids. Normally, your stomach acids, bacteria would kill the virus. It doesn't get past your stomach. So if you're on these antacids, now it gets into your bloodstream, goes to your kidneys, and it goes through your body. The other way of getting it is you kind of have dry mouth, and then the virus goes into your lungs. As long as your mouth's moist, it'll go to your stomach. But if you're on an antacid, and this is just my advice, if you're on an antacid right now, you're going to have trouble with this virus.
Well, they're saying too, people on ibuprofen or whatever,
well,
they're finding most of the people that are dying was taking that.
Yeah, those type of certain, Tylenol doesn't, but ibuprofen lowers your immune system. And the antacids lower your bacteria in your stomach. And allow stuff. They actually, I have read a couple of years ago, people on these prescription antacids were actually getting tuberculosis, TB, because it was getting through the system. So, you know, I take one of these pills maybe once a month. You know, I have heartburn. I try to take the Tums. I tried it as little as possible because I don't trust those. So Fred, I pulled this up, and you know, everybody's going crazy here. COVID-19, the world's coming to an end. You know, a London report comes out saying that 2 million Americans are going to die from this, all of that. But that's not the real numbers, I think, when this is all said and done in the summer. So how do people die in the United States per day? Number one, abortions, 1,778 aborted a day. 1,778 aborted a day.
We got to do a thing on that one time.
Okay. Yeah.
What they do with the abortion.
Oh my God. I bought that movie Unplanned, and they showed a fetus being pulled apart. It was pulling away from the suction, and that's what convinced that woman to leave Planned Parenthood when she saw it for the first time, what actually happens. That kid had enough survival instinct as his leg got pulled off to pull away, and it just sucked him apart. It was disgusting.
But there's a lot of other stuff that goes on with the body after it leaves. So.
No, and some of them are alive when they. But okay, so heart attack 1,773 people, cancer 1,641, medical errors 685. That's a lot of people. So right there you got stuff that's killing 1,000, 2,000 people a day, right? But we're worried about what could be 100 a day, right? So here's thousands. You know, accidents 400, strokes 400, Alzheimer's 332, diabetes 228. The regular flu is 150 people a day die of the flu. 150 a day. When this is said and done, I don't think you're going to get 150 a day from this. I really don't.
You're not.
This is a short window. You know, quarantine's going to make it less, but that's 150 a day. Suicides, opioids, drinking, underage. Rifles, 1 person a day. But what they just do? Most of these governors shut down gun shops. 1 person a day dies of a rifle. A rifle, not gun, handgun, rifles, right? But they shut down the gun shops. And Dick's Sporting Goods no longer sells hunting rifles, and Walmart and all of that. So when you put it in perspective, I think there's a huge overreaction. Then you get this thing with the oil, right? And this is all the stuff I talk about in the book. all laced around a fictional story of the characters from my 2029 book as they're going about their day, and news and things are happening, and it's the same people that are in my other book, right? So it's a fictional story with conversation, etc. But now think about this oil thing, Fred. February 19th, Russia and Saudi Arabia get together, and they agree that they're going to work together on raising the price of oil and working together, right? Because the price of oil's been dropping. 3 weeks later, March 11th, Russia and Saudi Arabia get into a disagreement, and they both decide they're going to pump at full capacity, which drops the price of oil, which was the opposite of what they were supposedly agreed on.
Right.
Except that wasn't what they agreed on back then. When they got together in February, they're all part of this with China to destroy the shale market and try to destroy America. If I was Trump right now, I would be I'd have our defenses very awake on the West Coast for an attack. Okay? Because something else is going on.
Oh yeah, something is going on.
This doesn't make any sense. Yeah. This doesn't make sense. Why would the countries who need the higher price drop the price? They're talking about $10 a barrel oil now, under $1 at the gas pumps, right? So China needs low oil prices because they don't have any oil. They imported oil, just like Japan does, right? They would benefit from it. So Russia has their sights on the Middle East, since we're kind of pulling out of the Middle East. They're into Iran and Syria and all of that. But now, here's the interesting thing. Russia and Saudi Arabia, 70% of what they export is oil. That's what they do, is they export oil. Price goes down, that hurts their budgets, right? Russia needs $25 a barrel. I think oil today was 23, right? The United States shale needs around $30 a barrel to survive. Saudi Arabia, their budget to pay for everything, since 70% of what they export's oil, they need $60 a barrel. Although they pump their oil for about $6 or $8 a barrel, because those are big old wells.
Right.
They need to sell it at $60 a barrel, or they can't pay their bills, right? So why are they dropping the price of oil right now unless it's an attack on America? Why would you, and these are the same people where 16 Saudi Arabians flew 2 planes into the trade towers September 11th. Our friends, right? Just my opinion.
I'll leave that.
Are you seeing why my book got banned?
Yeah, but I'll leave that part to go.
That's a whole other story.
Yeah, that's a whole nother
that
story.
That is, as to
right
who's
there.
behind that and how big buildings just collapse. It's very true. You know, and no other skyscrapers ever did. You know, they caught fire. Okay.
Nobody believes it though.
Well, some do. Let's look at debt and the stock market, right? Back in 1960, 33% of the country's debt, their budget, was Social Security and Medicare. Now, today it's 66%. So 66 cents of every tax dollar goes back to Social Security and Medicare, right? Today, even with the booming economy, 40% of people get some sort of government assistance check. Whether, maybe, well, it wouldn't be Social Security and Medicare, because that's 66%. 40% of people are getting something from the government.
SSI.
Yeah, unemployment,
Medicaid,
something they're getting.
or,
disability, something they're getting, right? Our debt right now, as a country, is $200,000 per person.
Well,
China holds $1.17 trillion in U.S. debt, which Trump now is saying he's going to stick China with the bill for this of the $1 trillion, you know? And what's interesting, I wrote that in my book before he said it. So our debt of $23 trillion is going to go to $25 trillion. I don't know, there's some people say, well, we're going to default as a country and then create a whole new system. Because now you're adding $2 trillion. You know, the thought today is I went out to get lunch for us, and I'm in the car thinking, this package they just put together is $2 trillion, right? That is $6 million a person. $6 million a person in America is being spent on this. Yet, you're going to get $1,200, I'm going to get $1,200, families will get a little more, $2,000, $3,000, whatever it adds up to. So I'm saying to myself, why don't we do this from the bottom up? instead of the top-down, we're all corporate, all these. Why couldn't that $1,200 payment be $500,000? They spent $350 million on pork spending that had nothing to do with the situation. The Kennedy Center, some other stuff. $350 million is $1 million per person. Why couldn't we get rid of that pork spending, give everybody $500,000? Think about it, Fred. You would eliminate debt, you would eliminate poverty, you'd eliminate the excuse that, school loans, you'd have no reason why you couldn't go to college, you'd have no reason why you couldn't open a business. A family would get $1 million, 2 people, 4 people get $2 million. Do it from the bottom up.
They couldn't be over you then. They want to be over you.
Well, doesn't it seem that way?
That's the whole thing. You know, the senators, they had a meeting in the Intelligence Committee, and they found out 2 weeks prior to all of this, and they went out and pulled their stocks out. I mean, there was millions and millions of dollars involved in that. So here we go with the government again. This is why they do this. They want to control us. They become millionaires, and we become poor. That's what the government does.
It wasn't only those 4, because they're actually covered for inside trading, believe it or not. Senators and congressmen can do inside trading.
Yep.
But get this. Back in February, before this all really hit, when the senators sold, 150 top executives in the U.S. sold $9.3 billion in stock.
And also, a lot of your CEOs are quitting. And they're going to Wyoming.
And what's behind that? What's that about?
Well, allegedly in Wyoming, where they're going, there's an underground city. And they're all going to the underground city right now.
I would be careful, because Wyoming is the super volcano. And I don't think an underground city is going to help you if that thing goes off. But
you never know how far down.
But you get the Pizzagate thing, right?
Yeah.
And they're saying that certain Epstein, high-profile people involved in that, right? And all of a sudden you see some of them stepping down from their jobs.
Right.
But in this situation, and then you got that Bill Ackerman, who last week gets on CNBC, gives the most crazy interview about the end of the world,
Who?
Bill Ackerman, he's a hedge fund guy, right? So what happens? The market hits its bottom. He mysteriously buys at that point, does some stuff. He turns $27 million into $2.6 billion for himself. Oh, he didn't do that interview deliberately. No. He certainly did. And maybe those CEOs are smart. Well, that's why 150 of them sold before this all became a crisis.
Well, they all knew it. This is what I'm saying. We're saying China. I'm sure if we really looked at it, we had our fingers in it too. The United States has its fingers. Any damn shit that goes down, we're in it. Believe me.
Well, that's the whole conspiracy.
And that's the three-letter
agencies.
Yeah. 3-letter agencies. You know, the one begins with the C.
Yeah.
You know,
well,
cocaine in America.
Project Mockingbird. But so then this information is really helpful to people. I don't give stock advice, but I took a look at the past times that stocks really dropped. There's like 4 of them. They took 3 years to hit their bottom. Yeah. Now this is a sudden event that's not going to take 3 years, but the other 4 took 3 years to hit the bottom. They took between 5.5 and 25 years to come back. You know, the 1929 took 25 years to come back. The losses were between 46 and 87%. We dropped, I think, about 37%, which, based on what's going on, to me, it should have dropped even further, but those dropped at least 46%. And then, there's the question, should we have shut the whole economy down, or should people over 60, 65 have been the only ones quarantined? Because the younger people aren't dying at any more higher rate than the regular flu. And then they become, their immune system, they become immune. They won't get it next year. We run the risk of getting it again next year.
I'm going to tell you something. Back in November and December, people in Ohio, West Virginia, in Pennsylvania, like Burgestown in that area, we were all sick. The symptoms of this stuff right here we had back then. Like I was sick for a month.
I was sick too for about 6 weeks.
Yeah, everybody, this was this here. And then, like you say, they weaponized it. They figured, we can do it, let's weaponize it, they did it. Yeah. We all had it. That's why we are one person in Hancock County where I live that's got this. I mean, we had it.
It's funny, I had 6 weeks of dry mouth.
Yeah.
I didn't have a head cold, I didn't have congestion. I could not drink enough water
No.
for about 6 weeks, dry mouth. I go, what is this, you know? But it seemed to be coinciding with this, you
Yeah.
know? So, you know, like I said, we're spending $6 million per person on this $2 trillion package. Did we go too far? Should we have, like even Trump now is saying, why can't the rural areas with no cases or less than 5 cases go back to work?
They should.
Why is it a scorched earth, one-size-fits-all policy to collapse the economy and destroy Trump's campaign? Isn't that what this is really
That's
about?
what it's all about.
To stop Trump.
Yeah, it's about Trump.
This is ball 3, and it's not going to stick, I hope, you know? But to me, I don't know, that stuff, I think when we look back, we're going to probably find out that, you know, what we're doing is overkill. And to have the same policy in New York City as you have in Mercer County makes no sense.
New Cumberland.
Yeah, New Cumberland, you know, in West Virginia.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't get their first case for the whole state until a couple of days ago,
Yeah.
but yet you got the same, everybody shuts down. You tell me a farmer in a rural area needs to shut down?
No.
He should be working his fields and getting everything ready. Why would he shut down?
But it's the media. The media, oh my God, you can't do this.
I
Oh
agree.
my God, you can't do that. Oh, this and that, this and that. If you go out and do this, do that. It's like it worked. All right? I'm 71 and I got COPD. Do I really give a shit?
Well, you're
I'm
first,
there. I'm
you're
not
first
sick,
on their list for people who can get it. You know?
but I've had it already.
You probably have, and
I've
I think
had
the
it already.
testing is going to show some of that too.
Yeah.
So, Fred, I put these 4 graphs together, and I hope when we put this film together, you leave this up for a little bit. But this is to help people, to show them how long it took for the market to drop, how long to recover. In all 4 of these cases, 1929, 73, 2000, 2007, it took 7 years to get back to where you started. And people here, you know, they thinking the market's going to drop and then come back at the end of the year.
No.
I don't think it's coming back to where it was.
No, it ain't going to.
All past dilemmas took 7 years to come back.
Yep.
And the drops were closer to 50% in the stock price, you know. So that's for public knowledge, you know, it's out there, you can look it up yourself. But everything I've said so far has been, I think, very educational, very interesting, plus a lot more in the book. You know, but the book is a pro-Trump, pro-conservative, you know, is QAnon real? And that's what offended,
They are.
that's what offended somebody. Because I think somebody had to complain. I don't think that Amazon Kindle sits there and reads every book. Somebody had to file a complaint who bought it last week and said, I don't like this, right?
Okay.
And then they looked at it and said, oh, he's talking about conspiracies.
Like you're talking.
Like it wasn't in the title.
Okay.
You know?
We were supposed to do a UFO class.
Yeah.
Okay? The people that was running it, I made a statement online about immigrants or illegal immigrants coming in, I call them cockroaches. Well, they said that I'm racist. And they cut everything out. This is the way the people
So they
are.
canceled your presentation?
Yeah, I mean, these liberals can say what they want to say and do what they want to do, but we can't say anything.
Well, you know, Fred, you know, we were born into a free country, you know, where you know, the saying used to be, I may not agree with what you say, but I'll
I support
defend your right to say it.
right.
That doesn't exist anymore.
No.
And I don't understand why the younger people don't understand. You're going down a slippery slope that's going to throw people in jail for ideas
Well,
and
because
things
they're
that they
being-
say. It makes
they're
no
being
sense.
brainwashed in school.
I agree with you, and that's that
yeah.
hippies movement that has now moved into
Yeah.
professors,
Yep.
entertainment industry, and the news.
You watch, what's his name, Waters, on Waters World?
Yeah.
When he goes out and talks to these kids, 17 million people got killed and this and that. And, oh my God, that Trump's no good. Well, it wasn't Trump, it was Obama. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Well, then maybe, you know, they got them to the point now where anything, if you're a Republican or you're a conservative, you're no damn good. That's what they're teaching.
Goebbels and Hitler said if you could repeat a lie enough times, and the bigger the lie, people will believe it.
I know
And
I know people do UFO things that believe that too.
yeah, I agree. But you know what's funny? I got Jesse Waters' personal cell phone number from when he came to Bucks County.
Yeah.
Remember that in 2010?
Mhm.
And I texted him last night, 2 points. I don't know if he'll bring it up or whatever, but 2 points from my book that was important, you know? So I don't know if that'll ever come up. So now I get into the last stage of my book. The final chapter was, you know, and I became a reborn Christian in 2014. You look at, you know, Adam and Eve and that whole storyline, and I put this graph, this chart of how long everybody lived. The first 9 generations lived over 900 years, right? That because they were born 6,000 years ago, but their immune system was pure. There were no diseases, right? But they had such a strong immune system that nothing could kill them. I guarantee you, Adam, if he got cut on a branch or a lion scratched him, I think he would heal right up. I think his body was so powerful back then with a super immune system. But there were no diseases. And you look at the fact that the first 9 generations lived over 900 years. Then you see the ages drop, and it makes a lot of sense when you think about it. The ages drop 600 years, 400 years, 200 years, 150, 180, 130, 110. And that's because it was all interbreeding. They were brothers and sisters, cousins, intermarrying, and then you started getting genetic deformities and other things that just happened generation after generation. So back then, they would have none of these diseases because their immune system was so strong. And that makes a lot of sense to me. It really does when you look at this chart, that this is probably the true story. And then because of interbreeding, we had genetic problems and mutations in our genes and stuff from generation to generation.
Or was it somebody from up there that may have came down and called?
I don't buy that. I don't buy that, Fred. I know that's the ancient.
Yeah,
okay, so you believe in that. I don't believe in that. I believe that we were created and that the
No, I'm saying we was created, but over the years, like say Cain and, not Cain, who's the one who turned to salt? Who was
I know
that
what
lady?
you're talking about.
Yeah, okay,
the 2
so,
of them.
so was that really an atomic bomb blast? Could it have been that? I mean, you know, maybe they did come down.
I see you know, and I've said this before, I see everything that's unexplained like that in UFOs and all of that as interdimensional.
Yeah.
And I think it's more in the spiritual, but they're able to manifest themselves physically.
But we say up there.
Yeah, I don't think it's from space at all.
No.
Just because the UFO flies doesn't mean it's from space.
They're ultra-terrestrials.
Yeah, they're from dimensions. So then I thought about this conversation I had 5-6 years ago with Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, and Dr. Woods from MUFON's board. We were at the symposium, and it might have been the cocktail hour, and Greer said something when he had that Atacama mummy. Remember the one that was like, he found this little baby and he said it was an extraterrestrial? Turned out it wasn't. Yeah. But he made a comment about eschatology. And I had never heard that word before, right? Eschatology is the study of the end times. So as I started reading up on that, I came across some book that brought it up and asked the question, can humans do something so heinous like Hitler, right? Can they do something so heinous like that that would cause the premature return of Jesus, of God, because what we did was so bad? It just gets my mind thinking, you know, could a deliberate virus that, let's say, kills millions of people, is that enough? I don't think this is going to be as bad as the Spanish flu, the wars that we've had, etc. I don't know, but you know, it gets me thinking. Then, most people aren't familiar with this, Fred, and I saw this a couple of months ago, right? And I put it in my book. There is a locust swarm in East Africa right now, right? Somalia, in East Africa. 192 billion locusts are eating everything in East Africa. They eat as much as 70 million people a day, right? 192 billion locusts. They said in 6 months, they will multiply to 400 times 192 billion. So there will be like 8 trillion locusts. And they said that that could cause 60 countries, or about a third of that whole region, of all the countries, to have a famine because of the locusts. So, and it would deplete about a third of the world's food supply. So you think about eschatology, the end times, the things that were predicted in Revelation. You've got famines, plagues. I saw something recently on Yellowstone supervolcano. The ground was swelling up again at Yellowstone, the supervolcano. I saw something yesterday, earthquakes, 4.1 earthquake, I think it was California.
Yeah.
I tell you, Fred, if something else happens, like an asteroid strike, a supervolcano, something on in the rim of fire, we might be entering the end of days right now.
Well, they're saying right now a couple of these asteroids are coming down. They're damn close.
I've seen that too. Yeah, I mean, that's the 2029 book I wrote. It was about an asteroid strike, and I based a lot of that around Revelation, you know, in that storyline. So, you know, I think this might be the end of the presentation here. I remember, and I put this in the 2029 book, something that Hubert Humphrey said. The moral test of government, because people are saying right now, how many people, you know, should we collapse the economy to save a few seniors? You know, what is an acceptable death rate with this? But I remember this quote: the moral test of government is how the government treats those who are in the dawn of life, which are children, those in the twilight of life, the elderly, those in the shadow of life, people that are sick, right? That's the moral test of government, is how we treat these people. So, in my opinion, Trump's doing the right thing, spending $2 trillion, trying to minimize the number of deaths. Whether that all works out to be cost effective, I don't know, but I think he's doing the right thing.
The whole thing is, no matter what the guy does, people are going to say he's doing wrong.
Unfortunately.
And I think, like I'll say straight out, I used to be a Democrat for 60 some years. And
you were born a Democrat.
yeah,
then.
I was. I mean, you know, back in the coal mining days, that's what you was.
Yeah.
Real quick, I can remember when Eisenhower came on television, and you know, back in the day, the worst Democrat was better than a Republican. But when Eisenhower came on the television, he was the president of the United States. And if you talked, when he was talking, you get your ass whipped. But again, I think a lot of this has to do with Trump. Trump's starting to take care of things the way that he said he would, and they don't like that. I mean, they got to get rid of him, and this is one of the ways they're trying.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, you know,
it's a big conspiracy.
This area we live in here by Pittsburgh, you know, that's the Guns and Bibles. I remember when I first moved here in '97, I was in a staff meeting at UPS. We were talking about competition with the post office, and they said something in the meeting about how, you know, they have a monopoly, and you know, they undercut package prices, and I started talking trash on the post office. One of the division managers said to me, "Hey, over here, we don't talk bad about the government in any way."
Yeah.
Like the way you said.
Yeah.
That was 23 years ago. I don't think it's like that anymore.
No.
But that was one of the things the guy said to me.
Yeah.
Even the post office, you don't talk bad about anything. And that's the way it was after World War II.
Right.
We were all on
Together.
the same page.
Yeah.
It's not like
But
that. So
we went our own separate ways. I mean, you know, everybody did their own thing in the 60s.
yeah,
After Kennedy got killed,
that was a big change.
the social network, they regenerated the whole thing to make people forget about Kennedy. It's like they say the Beatles. The Beatles was actually made by us. We brought them over here after Kennedy got killed.
Right.
I mean, so this is what we did. We made the world the way we wanted, and now you have those up at the top who are taking.
Well, it's absolutely being engineered.
Yeah,
I
that's
mean,
what it
you
is.
see
Everything
it,
is.
and that's this new world order. So, Fred, before we continue this, that's my book, and that's what was banned. Everything I told you, nothing I just said right now was any worse than what was in the book.
Right.
It was in a storyline, conversation. What if? Like Giorgio, what if? Could it be? You know, I don't know what the truth is, and they banned my book. But I'm going to print the book.
Well, because you got people there now, I mean, snowflakes and millennials, and they want it their way. And if it ain't their way, it ain't going to be. And that's the way it is. I mean, you know. And also the government could have looked at that. And they said, we don't want that. The government, you know, Mockingbird was back then. Mockingbbird's still here.
Yeah.
Half the people in the news media is planted.
I'm going to get
By
this book to
government.
Trump because I'm going to
Yeah.
win the delegate to the National
Yeah.
Convention in August, and I'm going to have this printed. And whether I hand it to him or his son, I'm going to give it to somebody and say, "Here, your father get a kick out of this," if they'll give it to him. He may not accept anything from me because he shouldn't accept things. You know what I'm saying? You could have it laced with cyanide. Who knows? I mean, he shouldn't accept anything, you know. But anything, you brought some notes here. Any other conspiracies? You know, we talked about the New World Order. We talked about China, the Clintons. You know, all these different people taking pot shots to stop Trump, and none of them seems to be working. Anything else you wanted to add on this thing?
No, that's about it.
Okay. Well, it's been 2 months since our last show. I gave you a DVD. Jamie will cut DVDs on this one, and this is, I think, our first show that really didn't involve the paranormal, unexplained, supernatural, preternatural. This is a political thriller conspiracy show, and I think it went pretty good. So now maybe we'll talk about other things that...
I agree with you. I think we should get heavy into conspiracies. I think people are into conspiracies now more than they're into the paranormal.
Well, you know, the one thing is, Fred, is people that, just because you see something and it appears a certain way, doesn't mean it's true.
True.
That's our show, and we'll do another one. Thanks, Fred. I'd shake your hand, but I'm not going near you. Thanks.